right now. So, thanks for joining. So the purpose of tonight's session is basically just to just to provide the information about the honors degree. The master's degree in multimedia. I'm gonna be doing most of the talking, but my colleagues Anik and Tiny are also here, so please, both of you, feel free to jump in if I'm missing something, or if you just want to add your something to what I'm saying. And then I also asked Vaich to join. There will be a little bit of a section later on, just where he will provide some of his own personal perspective on what it's actually like to do a master's degree while also working but not working at the university. Because that's obviously how the rest of us working here actually did it. So, the program for tonight is I'm gonna talk about what the degree actually entails. Just run through the whole process of what does it look like to actually do your MIS Multimedia degree. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits based on some stuff we've gotten from companies and so on. And then Vaik will share his personal account, and then we're just going to run through the logistics of the whole application process. So, firstly, what is the MIS Multimedia degree actually? So the form that it takes is basically a research project. So if you've recently done IMY 761, it's like that, but much bigger. So a research project where you're expected to make some kind of original contribution within an area that is related to multimedia. And this is pretty broad. So we have things like XR, which we've been focusing quite a lot on, gamification, game studies, which include things like alternate reality games, serious games, game-based learning, or subsets of game-related stuff. And then also HCI, UX, and information architecture. So, basically, and then this can also include a bunch of other stuff potentially. I think one way that I would describe it is that the focus for this is very much on people, on people's relationship to technology. Which is different from something like computer science, where, for example, you might investigate, let's say, computational intelligence, and then the focus would be on performance metrics and stuff like this. Whereas if you're doing a multimedia related to a research project, it would very much be about understanding how people respond to technology, or how technology facilitates some kind of people-driven goals, like learning or enjoyment, and so on. So essentially there's a strong people focus in the kind of stuff we do, and I think this is a pretty good way to understand what the degree entails, or at least what the research project would focus on. And then it also often involves the creation of some kind of software, like a VR app or a web solution, but this doesn't necessarily need to be the case. It really depends on what you're doing and what you are investigating. So, for example, if you are investigating the use of VR in some novel context, then it makes sense that you might want to create your own VR app, because then this allows you to give it to people and collect data and understand how they use this, or how they're interested in this. And the same goes for some web solution. If you are investigating some let's say gamification, but it's web-based. You're administering it through a web-based platform. Then it would make sense that you would have to create something, or probably need to create something that you can then give to people, and then you would be able to collect data based on how people respond to the thing that you're investigating. But a research project doesn't need to involve the creation of some kind of novel software. We will go through a couple of examples of previous multimedia research projects for people's masters, and I'll specifically point out the ones that or kind of what they entailed, and you'll be able to tell which ones did and didn't involve the person actually creating an original piece of software. So the focus of this whole project is very much on generating knowledge, like understanding some aspect of technology or people's relationship or behavior or something better as it pertains to technology. So the technology is only a means to an end. That's why it's not necessarily a crucial component. But I mean, being able to create a technological solution is obviously a big benefit, because that means you can do stuff that someone else couldn't if they weren't able to write software. So just what does this actually mean? So I said the focus is on generating knowledge, and this is something that I think we as multimedia people sometimes have trouble coming to grips with, because we very much have I think usually, like, if you graduated with this, then with a multimedia degree, then you probably have a pretty close relationship with technology, but also with like good software, like software that is polished and is finished and looks good and feels good and all of that stuff. And it's kind of a bit of a mental shift to move away from just creating a product that is good in its own right and serves its own purpose, toward like a product that only exists to help you understand some general thing better. So for example, if you were to design a website for someone, let's say, like an e-commerce website, then you would obviously focus on trying to make every aspect of it as good as possible and trying to fix all the bugs and trying to catch everything and basically create a good product. Whereas if your focus was on generating knowledge, you might focus on some aspect of the website that might, or rather you might focus on some aspect of people's use of websites in general, and then you might just use your own website as a vehicle for studying this. Like, what effect does this thing have on the way people use websites, or the way people experience this thing as it pertains to website use? Or, if you were to investigate some game design type thing, rather than just trying to make the best game as good as possible and kind of relying on your own tacit knowledge and thinking, I'm doing this because I know that this creates a good experience and so on, you might create something that has different versions, and then testing what is the effect of changing this UI thing to that, what is the effect of that on this aspect of gameplay experience, and so on. So yeah, this also means that the technology does not necessarily have to be complete or polished, or at least not as much as a commercial product. If you read research papers, you'll see that oftentimes when people create something, it's just kind of it almost looks like a proof of concept, because it's just there to have something to give to people and expose them to something and then collect data from them. But yeah, so the focus is on basically asking questions about the general thing that you are investigating, and then getting answers to those questions. And the results should provide a unique contribution to knowledge. So this is one of the things that I think that this is one of the reasons why there is quite a steep learning curve, I guess is the right term, or barrier to entry in terms of getting into doing actual research, because you kind of need to catch yourself up on what has been done before, like where are we in this thing that I'm investigating, and then you need to go beyond that to ask like how can I actually contribute to this thing? How can I make this thing better? Or how can I add understanding to this thing for which we already have some general understanding? So to actually contribute to what we know in general, you basically have to catch yourself up to where we are now, and then ask yourself, how can I add more to this? What things don't we know that much about, or what gaps are there in our knowledge of something, and then how can I fill that gap, basically. And this is one of those things where like a supervisor will constantly talk about, like, what is the gap? What is the gap you are filling? How are you addressing the gap? So the finding the gap is something that is a very important in terms of adding to new knowledge and making a unique contribution. Anik and Tiny, anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think you're doing really well.
Okay, good.
Nothing from my side, neither.
Great. Okay, so what is the actual structure? I've spoken about this in general terms. So about how does this actually pan out? So typical structure, there's something called the reading program, which essentially, I think Anik is going to talk about this a little bit in terms of it's more the administrative stuff, but basically what this means is that you are entered as I don't know if you're even technically a student, but you're entered in the reading program. You have access to all the university resources, so all the journals and conference papers and all of that stuff that basically, as the name suggests, you would need to read. And this is a year in which you can basically like just read a bunch of stuff, like read all, like as much as the journals and the conference papers and the books and the whatnot that you can find on the thing that you want to investigate, to bring yourself up to speed with where we are now. And this is essentially a necessary point or a necessary thing that you need to do to find your topic. And this usually takes about a year. Like I said, bring yourself up to speed is not easy. It does take about a year to really find and finalize your topic. But you're also doing a lot of work while you're doing it. You're gathering a lot of resources that you're going to refer to later, and you're probably already getting ideas for how you actually want to do the study while you're finding your topic. Very importantly, the reading program does not count towards the time that it to finish your studies. The university does want people to take about 2 years to finish their studies, but the reading program doesn't count. And then after the reading program, you have your actual study, where your actual degree, I guess, where you enter, you submit a proposal which has to get approved, and then you're actually doing your master's. Officially, the designated time for this is 2 years, but it usually takes about 3 years to finish this research project. Then the actual structure of what you would be doing. So the final output of the master's is a dissertation which contains 6 chapters. So the intro is just like usually just your proposal, but in a some kind of reworked form. Comprehensive literature review. This obviously takes quite long, but this is kind of also something that you're working at during the reading program. The methodology, which basically dictates in detail exactly how you want to investigate the thing that you want to investigate, how you want to get your data. Then there's a chapter 4, which is usually a system design if you are creating something. If not, then I'm actually not 100% sure. I haven't dealt with this, but I know that other people have written that, so we would be able to go back and check what they did. Results, so basically I collected my data, or I did my thing, here are my results and here's what they mean. And then the final chapter is like discussion and future direction. So like, what things have we learned? How does this contribute to knowledge? And then what are some interesting next steps to follow in terms of this thing that I investigated? So each chapter usually goes through about 3 rounds of revision. So in other words, you write something, you send it to your supervisor, or technically the people you would be dealing with the most is your co-supervisor. So that would be like me or Anik, or at the moment it's me and Anik. And then we would give feedback, send it back, and then this process repeats basically until the chapter is like in a good place, and we believe that it is good enough. And that usually happens about 3 times for the thing to be at a point where we're all comfortable with the quality. And this is also kind of how you learn how to do it, just by like writing stuff and getting a ton of feedback, implementing that feedback, improving, and then sending it back. And then this process kind of repeats. Okay, so just to give you an idea, a more concrete idea, I suppose, of what a project might entail, and also just like the kind of breadth of what has been done before. So some of you know Koos. He did his master's on this topic, analyzing alternate reality games based on game design theory to propose a conceptual framework. So this is one of the ones that didn't involve creating original software, because he essentially looked at, if you know what alternate reality games are, well, kind of a long thing to explain if you don't, but basically he looked at the structure of these games, like found examples of existing games, gathered a whole bunch of data, because it's not like a single thing, it's kind of a distributed collection of things, kind of brought all of that together, laid out the structure of the game, and then based on that created like a conceptual framework for how we can understand how these games actually work. So that's basically based on, okay, I should also add that this is obviously his project, and this is kind of just based on my understanding of it, but he collected a whole bunch of stuff from these existing games, analyzed them together according to game design theory, and then created a way for us to understand how they work in general terms, like not just each game individually, but kind of how does this whole game genre actually function, or how can we actually understand it. Then Isabel Solves, she did it about evaluating the usability of the information architecture of academic library websites. This is also one for which there was no system being developed. She basically looked at library websites, well, specifically she looked at library websites of universities in South Africa, came up with like heuristics based on information architecture and research in that area, and then use that to evaluate the usability and provide suggestions for improvement. I'm sort of going to go through these a bit faster because I am kind of taking a lot of time. Adam Jarrett did it about exercising library and information literacies through alternate reality gaming. So basically, he and us, actually, his students in honors, designed an alternate reality game that the purpose of which was to teach people information literacy. So gathering clues by finding things in the library and like visiting certain websites, using certain websites for information finding, and so on. So actually, by playing the game, you're learning information literacy. That was kind of the purpose. Then Anik, maybe you want to be the one to talk about your own stuff.
Sure. Just very briefly, I developed a gamified website, which was implemented in a first-year module to improve the motivation of the students towards the course content. So the website was based on gamification and principles of gameful design, and it was used by the students throughout the semester, and then I gathered data at the end in order to determine whether it was successful at eliciting motivation, which it sort of was.
Cool. Then, sorry, I just need to get back to my own thing, which was basically about investigating the possibility of using sound to create the illusion of touch in virtual reality, so exploiting commonalities between audio and tactile feedback, so sense of hearing and the sense of touch, and then using that to induce the illusion of actually touching stuff when your hand is actually just kind of floating in the air, which kind of worked, which was pretty cool. So that was my own thing. And then Dave, who isn't here, but I'm his supervisor, well, his co-supervisor, so I can talk about this. Basically, exploiting the use of our proprioceptive sense, so like the sense of where our limbs are and our body movement and orientation and all of that, and designing a menu system which makes use of this innate sense toward the design of alternative menu systems in virtual reality. Then Tiny, who is also here, so I can also ask you to quickly talk about your own master's topic.
Hello. Sure. So as the slide said, using game-based learning to allow for meaningful choices in mining virtual reality environment. Initially, you create a game that uses certain game design theory to improve the overall learning experience from just simply you recording things to a meaningful experience that adds to not just the education, but the value of the education.
Cool, thanks. And then we have Vaich, and you're also here, so I can quickly... actually, maybe we should leave that until you actually launch into your personal account, so that you can just talk about what you're doing and do it all there. And then Cholofelo, Anik, can you quickly talk about her project as well?
Yeah, so Tolo is, as it says, using eye tracking, and she's using it in a shared VR setup in order to use it as an interaction technique between the two users to determine whether it can be used as a method of communication. But we're still in the early phases of the project, so nothing has been built yet.
Cool. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a pretty solid idea of the type of stuff that we're doing. And as you can see, all of them except two, well, actually, I should point that out. All of them except the first two did involve the creation of like some custom piece of software, like a VR app or a gamified website, in order to test the thing that you are actually investigating. But yeah, so even though this isn't a requirement, this is usually kind of how it goes. Then, okay, so what are the actual benefits? Why should you do this? And this is where it gets, I suppose, a little bit tricky to discuss, just because we did send out a survey to various people in the industry, and there are quite varying opinions about the roles, the benefits, and also where these benefits are most prominent. So there are generally some remuneration benefits, so like helping you get the giving you maybe a leg up in actually landing the position, or just pay raise, or making you eligible for advances, promotions and so on. But as you might imagine, it really depends on the company itself. So there are varying opinions in terms of the benefits of this, as well as later career development, like actually moving up toward perhaps more managerial positions or so on. So ultimately, in terms of how it would benefit you, I would say you probably know best. If at the company you work with, you probably have a better idea of what these benefits would be. Just in our experience, it does vary quite a lot between companies. Some companies are very keen on it and say yes, like we're very keen on people pursuing their masters and getting specializations and things. Some companies are more unfazed about it, and we have had some companies that are kind of opposed to it. So ultimately, it really depends on where you're working and also why you're doing it, like what you're doing it in, and so on. One thing that I did pick up on the information that we got is it can be beneficial for proof of domain specialization. So if you're doing it in something specific, then that obviously pushes you to specialize in that thing, which might be beneficial if that is the type of thing that you are pursuing in general. So, if you're doing it in some UX focused thing, then that obviously makes you a bit more of an expert on UX, for example. It's also proof of a lot of effort and discipline. So just the fact that you are able to push through this thing because it gets quite tough. The fact that you are able to push through this thing is proof that you are able to really apply your own sense of discipline and initiative toward taking on this pretty big project. And this has also been my personal experience. This is something that I would tell people about it. Like, it's not just about learning the thing that you are interested in. Like, I want to do it about sound in VR, for example. It's also really about learning that self-discipline and that sense of, just getting yourself to do this thing where there's no one standing behind you all the time asking you, how far are you? Are you done with this? Or you're that? That person is you. So in the process of doing that, you're really teaching yourself how to be disciplined, how to be structured, how to impose this thing into your life, and how to carry through on this pretty difficult project. And this is also why I would really recommend thinking about what you would be interested in doing and also why. So, if it's something to do with your career, think about how what you would be investigating actually fits in with your career. But also, I would always recommend that if you're doing a master's, you should really pursue something that you're personally very interested in, something that you don't mind. If I give you a book, if I give you a stack of books on something, you don't go, ugh, geez, I need to read like more books now. Actually, something that ideally you think like, oh, this is pretty cool, like you actually want to read those books and you want to pursue this thing, and you're actually really interested in finding answers to these questions that you are setting out to do. And so next, I'm going to ask Vaich just to share his personal experience. I thought, just because, like I said, your personal experience is probably more representative of what most people's would be. So, yeah, Vaich, please take it away.
Cool, thanks, Duffy. So from my personal experience, it's still ongoing and probably going to be ongoing for another year as well. But from my personal experience, I personally took on the reading program, as Diffie mentioned earlier, and I would highly recommend the reading program. It gives you just that little bit of a slow run-up of a start instead of being dropped in the deep end. So that really helped a lot to just, get an idea formulated and everything before starting with the apps, the actual study and the actual research. So the reading program, big ups from my side, and I would highly recommend it. And then unfortunately, it got a bit hijacked with COVID and everything, and I kicked off my first year of masters with COVID and a hard lockdown, and that kind of caused the support that we had in place to just not be as accessible as one would have hoped. We couldn't get together and talk about ideas and throw around ideas and stuff. So that quite sucked. But with hard lockdown, you get bored. I did get a lot of time to read and read a lot of literature and articles and even an entire book for my topic. So COVID was a double-edged sword at the end of the day for masters. But yeah, I want to confirm or agree with Diffie of what he said. When you're choosing a topic, it needs to be very personal to you and something that you can get excited about and passionate about. Because from my side, I never went into masters for to get more money. I'm not going to get more money from my job if I have a masters. It's purely I purely went into masters because I thought I had a cool idea that can add knowledge to the field of virtual reality and on a side hustle to psychology as well, and really an idea that I personally believe can actually help people in the long run if it leads to something. So that's why I went into masters, and then I chose this idea because it's very personal to me and it's also fascinating, very interesting to me, which really does help, as Diffie says, for you to, when you come home after work or have had a long day at the office, a bad day at the office, that you actually know, okay, I've got some interesting reading to do tonight, or I'm building a cool system tonight, something to get you excited about. So that really does help. So it makes you want to work on it. And I also decided early on that my master's, I'm going to treat it as somewhat of a hobby and not um, my main task of the day. And that has certainly helped me to once again get myself more motivated to tackle the reading, especially the reading. There's a lot of reading to do because I treated it like a hobby, something to, just a personal thing, not looking at the big picture too much. Because I believe with something as extensive as a master's, it's very important to do everything bit for bit and not to worry too much about the end product and rather just take it one step at a time, one article at a time. Otherwise, it gets very overwhelming very quickly. And yeah, and you're going to have multiple nights of a little bit self-pity and breakdowns. I mean, I think it comes with the territory of masters, but that's normal, absolutely normal. So yeah, I take it as a hobby, and every night when I get back home, I work an hour. That's my rule of thumb, at least an hour every day, whether I get an hour at work or hour after work. Just do a little bit every single day. It doesn't matter if you work on your chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, or as Quiz told me, it does, even if you just change your headings or work on your numbering or your bulleting, your formatting at the end of the day. Every bit counts. So as that slide said, my topic is inspired by a Harry Potter reference. It's the psychological, quasi-experimental neural study of induction efficacy of virtual environments. I think I worked almost harder on that acronym than on the actual master so far, but it works out and I'm very proud of it. So I'm going to put it on my CV one day. But so it basically is, there's a lot of virtual reality systems out there that help with the treatment of PTSD, mental disorders, phobias, and even physical disorders. There's really some fascinating research out there of their impact on like veterans and people with agoraphobia or arachnophobia. So it uses exposure therapy to desensitize people or to lessen the symptoms of their phobias and PTSD. Now, me personally, I underwent what you call ship therapy a couple of years back, and it's shares a lot of traits with exposure therapy, but it's a little bit more less desensitization and more um, you helping yourself, more of a guided meditation, soul searching type of thing. And it also uses images and stuff like that, like exposure therapy. And there's just no research with regards to virtual reality and SHIP, because SHIP suffers from the same problems that any psychological therapy suffers from. If a person struggles to imagine images or visualize certain things, the therapy is going to be very ineffective. So, virtual reality really helps to bridge that gap of people struggling to visualize stuff, in order to help them progress in their therapy. So, I thought SHIP can actually gain from this as well. So, that leads me to what Diff is explaining, that whatever topic you're tackling, you need to bridge the gap in the knowledge. You need to find the gap in the knowledge and then actually try and bridge it. So the gap in the knowledge of mine is, would virtual reality be beneficial to the overall process of SHIP? And through using examples of virtual reality exposure therapy systems, I am now attempting to do that. I'm also building a system. It's very simplistic. Once again, like Duffy said, I did work. The most work went into the user interface for the psychologist that will be facilitating my sessions, because we can't have mistakes and we can't have user errors. So the user interface needs to be very clear cut. But other than that, it's a very simplistic system with a single door visualization, and that's it. No interactivity, no other stimuli except visual input. So basically, just a quick thing to just get data collection done and everything. So I agree with Diffie. You shouldn't be focusing on the system all that much. Most importantly, in my opinion, is the idea. The idea needs to get you excited and needs to get you passionate about it, so you want to work at it at night or early morning or even on weekends. But even so, there still comes a time when masters is a little bit overwhelming. I decided as well that I won't let masters infiltrate or take over my life. I feel like I've accomplished that quite well. And I also think that it makes me work better and harder and smarter, because it doesn't feel like it's a burden. It feels like it's helping me, and it's part of me at the end of the day, part of my daily routine, and not something that I have to make time for. It's something that I want to make time for at the end of the day. So I believe that if you have the right idea, that naturally comes about. So yeah, that is my personal account. Main thing I would recommend anybody that's planning on pursuing masters is that idea. Work on that idea and get a cool idea. Just get something really, really cool. Then from a practical perspective, the first thing, and Quist said this to me always, Diffie said this to me always, but the first thing is learn Zotero. Just do it. Just don't try and be smart about this. I mean, I finally figured out only like beginning this year how Zotero integrates with Word, and I felt very silly, and I cried a little bit over all the time I wasted. So I would highly recommend learn Zotero, learn how it works with Word, find out the capabilities of it, and from the get-go work with it. Also, in that note, learn how to handle Word, because I've recently had an issue where the numbering of my images broke. I think it took me literally a day to figure it out. So learn how to handle those headings. It's very nitty gritty stuff, but yes, it can save you a lot of headaches and a lot of worry and a lot of read throughs. I think I've read through my literature review roughly 100 times now, and I've only been doing this for about 2 years. So if you want to avoid all those read throughs of looking for citation errors and stuff, just from the get go, do it well, do it right, and focus on that little nitty gritty stuff from the start. And exercise at the end of the day. This is very much like going to the gym. If you keep on doing it, it's going to get easier and easier. At this stage, I can't tell you how much my writing has improved as compared to my first draft. And right now, it feels like second nature, the stuff that I'm writing, and that's very cool. That's a very cool thing to note, that even if you might not make some groundbreaking discovery, you are improving yourself, you're improving your writing skills, your way you think, the way you do research, the way you conduct yourself. So that adds on to what Duffy says, the benefits of masters. It's at the end of the day, I think it's a growing experience on a professional and a personal note. And for me, that is more than enough to do this and to keep on trying to do this. So yeah, that's all from my side. Thanks, Duffy.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, I agree with you about learning. Just, I mean, it sounds silly to say learn Word, but you know, when you spend that many hours in MS Word, you do, you know, you learn it much better in that process. Oops, sorry. Is it better now? I think I might have just been too far. But anyway, so also, sorry, I wanted to just add to something that you said, which I think is quite important. You said like you're not gonna make like a groundbreaking discovery, which is I think something that the first time you go into this, you think, because you're doing something that you're interested in, that you want to improve, and you know you want this to be better for everyone and so on. So you kind of go in with this mindset of you want to kind of solve the field, you know, like I want to solve sound in VR, or you know I want to solve virtual reality exposure therapy and so on. And you can't do that by yourself in 3 years, you know, you just can't. So really, and there's this diagram that I should have included in the slides, but basically you're not you know exploring vast new territory. You are working within a very specific specialization, within a very specific area within that specialization, and within that very limited area you're making like a tiny little dent. You're making a tiny contribution, saying we now know a little bit more about this one small thing, and that is enough. That's, you know, the size of a contribution is always kind of a shaky issue, but don't think you're going to go in and like revolutionize the field. You're really focusing on this one specific thing that you can make a contribution in, but you can make a solid contribution in. Like you can really, when you say this design thing affects people in this way, or this thing can be used in this way, you really know that that's true because you've done this one very specific contribution you've done very well. So rather a very specific thing that's done well than a bunch of different stuff that's very flimsy. That's kind of the mindset you need to get into for just research in general. Cool. Then, okay, I am going to ask Aniek to explain the application process a bit.
Cool. Just before we go further, I just want to say, Vaig, thanks so much for your account. It was really cool to hear, and I resonated with a lot of what you said. Well done for learning Zotero. It's a, I'm glad it's changed your life. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to explain briefly what you guys actually have to go through if you want to officially do this. So the first thing to know is that you need a minimum of 65% for your honors degree in order to be considered. Usually that doesn't budge unless you have a decent CV and a really good proposal to sort of make up for that. So just be aware. Then the first thing you need to do, this is kind of an optional point, is to contact me to show me your interest. You can also contact Duffy, but the reason my name is there is because I'm technically the admin coordinator for this degree, which basically just means you tell me that you're keen and then I know. Because that's where my involvement stops. Because essentially I'm on the committee that handles the research proposals. I don't have much of a say in terms of whether it gets accepted or not, because I don't have my doctoral degree yet. But it would help if I know that you are going to apply, so that when your proposal comes up at the committee, I can say, yes, this person has contacted me, we've briefly spoken, and what they're wanting to do makes sense. It also helps to speak to one of us first because we can kind of guide your topic a little bit. However, if you see point 2, you'll see that this has to mostly be done on your own. But if you come to me and you say, I would like to do X, I can say, okay, maybe narrow it down in the following ways, or think about the following things. And that's going to help you to come up with a better proposal when you do actually apply. So the second thing you need to do is write sorry, I keep saying proposal, I mean abstract. You need to write a short abstract of about 1,200 words where you describe the following. I got this straight from the website, by the way. The field and objectives of your research. So you essentially give it a bit of a background and say what you want to do, say how it fits into the current understanding, and then very importantly, outline your research questions. These are obviously going to change, and it is not expected that what you write down here is what you decide to do in the end. This can change quite drastically. But the main purpose of this abstract is for the committee in the department to read and to decide firstly whether you are suitable to do your master's in this degree. For example, sometimes we have people who should be doing a publishing master's applying for an information science master's, and it just kind of helps to put them in the right place. Then it helps to determine your current level of proficiency in the topic and your understanding of the area, which will essentially help with the decision of whether you should be allowed to do this. And then lastly, it'll help to determine your supervisor. As Diffie mentioned, he and I are currently the only co-supervisors for the degree, which means you'll get one of us or both of us, and also another person in the department who has a doctoral degree, because that's the university guidelines that no one without a doctoral degree can supervise a master's by themselves. That person is basically going to be giving like high-level oversight on the project, but the co-supervisor will be doing the day-to-day feedback and most of the work with you on the project. So it's just good to be aware of that. So you write this abstract and then you apply online on the UP website with this abstract and with your academic record. I think maybe a CV as well. I'm not sure exactly what the portal looks like or what you have to add. And the recommendation is that you do this before May of any year. You can technically do this at any point in the year, but if you get accepted, that is the first year of your master's, unless you do the reading program, in which case that's your reading program year. So say you get accepted in June, you only have 6 months to do your reading program. So the suggestion or the recommendation is that you do it basically by Feb, maybe March, so that you have most of the year to either work on the reading program or actually start your master's degree properly. Otherwise, you're just essentially wasting time that you probably will need. So it's just worth knowing that. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I've said this, your proposal will then be considered by the departmental research committee, and you'll be told whether it's accepted and who your supervisor will be. Then you either register for the degree or the reading program, whichever one you decide. I would suggest, if you're not 100% sure what you want to do the reading program. It is an extra year, but that time is not wasted. As Diffie said earlier, all that work will go towards your actual master's. And if it turns out that you actually didn't really know what you wanted to do, then you didn't waste time in your actual degree, because it's really not so nice when the university starts putting pressure on you to finish. It's not nice pressure, put it that way. So the more time you can have on your degree actually working on a topic that you are sure about, the better, which is why the reading program is a really good time. It's like free time to clarify your thinking. Point 6 is what you will do once you start your actual degree. So this is now after the reading program. You start working on your full proposal, which is a document that outlines the background literature of your field, your research questions, your methodology that you want to follow, basically saying in as much detail as you possibly can everything you want to do for your study. This then goes to the departmental research committee again. They have to approve it, but you're essentially already registered for your degree, so you can kind of keep working. And if they only really reject proposals if they're really bad, but that doesn't mean you get kicked out of the degree. It just means keep trying. So it's just a formality that your proposal has to be approved, but you can still keep working on your whatever comes next. I think that's all I wanted to say here. So Diffie, you can go to the next slide. So this is just to briefly explain the reading program. I may be wrong about some of these details because I couldn't find anything on the university website about this. but I'm pretty sure that this does actually exist, because the committee has this year already like recommended that people do the reading program. So it's definitely something that exists. As Diffie said, you have access to the full library resources, so all the online journals, and you can then use this time to work on your full proposal. That's the recommendation. So you get accepted into your master's degree with your short abstract that you wrote. Then you spend the year reading and working on your proposal, so that the first committee meeting of the following year, when you're actually doing your master's, that proposal goes in and gets accepted, and you can basically hit the ground running and get started. That's the best use of that time. The cost is around 2,500 Rand for the year. But again, I stand corrected because I couldn't find an official resource for this. As we said, this doesn't count towards the time taken for your degree, and it's really helpful to do if you're not really sure about what you want to do. The last point is really important. Your supervisor can only offer you limited support during this time. The reason is, technically, they're not your supervisor yet, because you're not paying to be a student. You're paying to get access to the resources. So we've been pretty strictly told that we're not supposed to offer too much help, or rather, too much of our time to students who are not paying to be actual students, because that takes a lot of our time, and sometimes those students don't end up actually registering for their degrees, and then a lot of our time has gone towards something that didn't actually turn into a master's degree. So we would definitely be willing to guide you, but you're never going to have full supervision meetings the way you would once you actually register for your degree. But you're not completely on your own, and we are definitely keen to get more master's students through the degree, so we're not going to leave you on your own. We will guide you towards, formulating your stuff properly, and helping you as much as we can along the way. So that's it with regards to the actual admin side. I just want to find out if there are any... Oh, actually, Diffie, you're going to ask questions at the end, so I'll just wait till then.
Yes. Well, actually, I was thinking, Vaich, you could probably confirm, or if you still remember the details, at least with regards to the cost, maybe.
Yeah, if I can quickly think now, I think 2,500 Rand sounds right. I think that was the amount. I think it might have been 2,000 Rand, but that was 3 years ago. So, since then there's been an entire war in Russia. So I think everything is more expensive now. So yeah, 2.5 sounds about right. And it was the short proposal. It was a short idea of 800 to 1,200 words, and nothing too much detail, no citations really and stuff like that. So it's very chilled, and it's a nice year to just get your ducks in a row and decide whether or not you actually want to take on this endeavor and everything. So yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Awesome. Okay, and that about concludes all of the official information. Just I think just something else that I want to conclude with is that, like Vaich said, it gets tough. I mean, I think all of us who work here have been through that, the highs and the lows and so on. And so you should know what you're getting yourself into. It is quite a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that you need to motivate yourself to keep doing, which gets hard. But also it is much more collaborative in the sense that it's not really like an undergrad or even an honors degree where you're kind of expected to do this thing on your own and your lecturer shouldn't intervene too much. It is much more about you get much more guidance from your supervisor on this type of project, and that, like Anik said, already starts quite at the start. So if you want to do the reading program, or if you just want to find out something, maybe you have like a ballpark idea of what you are interested in and so on, but you're struggling to get started, to get direction into how you can actually transform this into a proper topic and so on, you're welcome to contact us. We're very keen to chat about this and to just help you get started at least, and talk about ideas, maybe give you good directions where to start looking, maybe send you articles or resources or something just to help you get started. So feel free to contact us about this. We're very keen to get more people on board and so on. And that is it from me. So it's been almost exactly an hour. So I think if there are any questions, we can go over to that.
Hi guys. So I have a question. Just want to say thank you. This was very informative.
Cool. I'm glad.
Great.
Okay, well, it looks like there aren't any questions, but yeah, like I said, you're welcome to reach out to us. If you're watching the recording, you're also welcome to reach out to us about this. And yeah, thank you so much. Okay, thanks for joining, everybody. I hope this answered your questions, and have a good night.
Cool. Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Thanks,
Cheers.
Fi.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.